Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell. In our show this time, we'll cover a program in which one of our ThinkTech hosts familiarized members of the federal judiciary about the prospects and challenges of drone development in Hawaii. Our host, Ted Ralston, showed them how drones work in an outing at Kauai Nui Marsh, and then in a panel he organized for them at a judicial meeting at the Halekulani. For the past 2 years, Ted has been hosting a ThinkTech talk show at 4 p.m. on Fridays. It's called Where the Road Leads. It deals mostly with UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, aka drones. A few weeks ago, the federal judiciary asked Ted to tell them about the prospects and challenges of drone development. He was delighted to do so, and we were delighted that he'd been asked. The first thing Ted did was to organize an outing for them at the field that drone operators and enthusiasts customarily use to learn, fly, and test their drones. It's in Kauai Nui Marsh in Kailua. Ted and his friends showed them both rotor-equipped drones and fixed-wing drones, and all the equipment necessary to operate them. He was pleased to answer the questions about the technology.
It also has a full kind of aerobatic mode. So you can flip it, you can fly it upside down, you can do all kinds of different things with it. So you can put it onto missions and you can have it fly to different points and so on. It's nice because you can also program in safety. You can say, if you're within a 5-mile radius of the airport, it won't allow you to fly. Right. Or it won't allow you to go above the FAA regulations. For this type of aircraft, you have to stay below 400 feet. This is kind of the hobby field. For radio control, this has grown out of the radio-controlled hobby, so radio-controlled airplanes, gliders, helicopters, and now quads. So this is kind of the radio control or the hobbyist, and the field is a sanctioned field. The FAA is now allowing you to fly at different places, but they want you to abide by a certain rule, like you can't fly over people, you can't fly over crowds or things like that, and you can't fly within 5 miles of an airport, and you have to stay under 400 feet.
And I can cycle through any one of the 3 cameras on the ground station. Right now it's set to climb to 200 feet. So we'll just launch it, it'll just zip straight up. I can go about 70, and so it'll handle about 40 knot wind without any problem. It'll climb at about 1,600 feet per minute. You'll see that right now. So this thing is set for 5 cameras now, the 3 native cameras plus the video, the high res and the infrared. So this is the stage that all these systems here would love to be in, and maybe when they grow up they'll get to this stage.
There's so many areas that of vulnerability, and to create reliability and safety, you can either make the frequencies that we use very robust, the systems that we use very locked in, very robust, but we're really in the infancy here. It's not like my daytime job with the airlines where everything's been locked in for the last, for decades, and we've only been doing this for a very short period of time. So in order to create sort of an equivalent level of safety, I've just had to add a lot of redundancy on different, so we have multiple frequencies, multiple GPSs, and they all get channeled into the central computer, which picks the best out of them. By using multiple frequencies, multiple methods of control, and methods of getting the information off the aircraft, we can make the system a whole lot more robust. And other than that, it's mostly about human factors. It's about making sure that we have systems and checklists in place, and that we have clear communication, which is really the most important thing with any aviation.
That's where the future of the onboard intelligence is. It's in the extracting of information from a range and then filtering that range of information and making the best decision based on what's available. And UH is working on a program to use acoustic signature bounced off obstacles and such, or from other drones, to understand your proximity threat issues. Right now the state isn't is a little bit behind in getting its funding going and this sort of thing. So private industry is coming in to fill the gap, and that's what you see here. This is all private interest going forward here, making headway here in big ways. We need sort of a coordinated advocacy. We need this kind of a informal thing made more formal. We need some steps we have to all make happen, but it's all right here.
So I'll go over the course with you real quickly, the flight plan. You can see we're going to take off. It's going to be about 15 to 20 degrees nose up. It's going to fly out to 150 feet, and then it's going to make or 50 meters, and then it's going to turn to the first waypoint. The first waypoint is over around that corner. It's going to be, this side of where the hill comes up, about lined up with that road. And then it's going to fly across just this side of this road to about this side of the field, and it's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 lawnmower patterns back and forth, and that will simulate mapping. That's what we do with mapping. And then it'll come back to this corner and fly a loop around to about that corner, where it will be go into a loiter. It'll do 2 turns in a circle, which gives it time to adjust its altitude, make sure everything's caught up before it proceeds with the approach. I have it programmed for an automatic landing. I'm not sure if I'm going to let it automatic land. We'll see how that goes. I'll just take over and land it manually, but at least if something were to happen, it will just come back and land itself.
A few weeks later, Ted was asked to organize and participate in a panel designed to cover the prospects and challenges of drone development. It was part of a judicial conference held at the Halekulani.
In the future, where this industry is going is those drones will be, stationed outside the field somewhere. They'll be pre-programmed. The farmer, they'll fly at night, they'll fly during day, they'll have their pre-programmed missions, and the farmer won't even know when they're flying. The farmer won't even be involved in that. The farmer will just get the information on his or her phone, on a computer, and then they can make quick decisions about their operation. And the same will go for all sorts of different industries. These things are meant to fly autonomously and kind of on their own in pre-programmed missions and not manually flown. And so the manual part of it kind of is taken away, and the information is just very immediate And that's where the true value of drones is going to be.
BNSF, which is the second largest railroad in the United States based on miles of track, their rails run pretty much west of the Mississippi from coast to coast. They are very concerned. They haul a lot of oil out of Oregon and Canada, and they're very concerned about what happened in that Canadian town where a derailment caused essentially a devastation of the whole town. So they literally want a drone to fly in front of those trains every time they're moving through the country, looking at the rails with automated systems that'll identify any problems in the rails and alert the drivers immediately. That's their vision for the future on how to upgrade the safety of their system. And BNSF is just, they're amazingly big on safety, personnel safety, et cetera.
Do the drones communicate with each other? And if so, how are they doing that? I mean, we see things, you know, in the movies and in other places where they avoid each other and they're flying as a platoon, let's say. Mm-hmm. Is that part of the new technology that's coming up?
The military has a version of the Global Hawk that's entire purpose is communication relay. They can orbit it over a combat environment and relay the signals from all kinds of different types of communications, which has, you know, saved lives in Afghanistan on numerous occasions. So they do talk to each other. The biggest barrier for that is the availability of the spectrum to allow them, you know, to have the bandwidth to move all that data around. And it's the biggest challenge the military has in their drone programs.
The technology that's being developed is fairly advanced. I mean, there's still a lot that needs to be perfected to enable a lot of what we want to do. But, you know, it's really, a lot of it's the regulatory environment that is kind of holding back some of what's possible. But there's, you know, it's amazing what's being developed to advance how these drones are flown.
We've seen this incredible explosion of drone manufacturing. Is the U.S. lagging behind China, or is it just that China can produce so many more drones than any other country?
The majority of the large manufacturers are coming out of China. You have DJI, Unique, Ehang,
Parrot.
Otel, Parrot's in France.
Oh, yeah.
But again, non-U.S. You know, manufacturing is taking place primarily out of the United States. The biggest manufacturer in the U.S. for quads is 3D Robotics, and they're just not at the same scale. You know, I think the United States is falling behind in a lot of different areas where it comes to drones. Part of that is based on the regulatory environment. But the FAA is doing much better thanks to Jim and all the work that he put in place before he retired. I mean, things are happening to help us kind of catch up with where we were, catch up to where some other countries are. But yeah, I mean, it is a true statement that a lot of the manufacturing is happening overseas, and these Chinese and the one French company, they are setting up subsidiaries here in the United States as well.
But there's a point to be made on top of that. That's, you're speaking about the manufacturing of the element itself. The software that operates the system internally, the flight management system, the autopilots, and this sort of thing, are actually being generated by blogs, by blog activities, crowdsourced engineering, retired people out of aerospace who can't give up, and they keep doing flight management systems. We're doing some research at UH in that same dimension. And then secondly, the analytical software that produces the landforms that you saw in the videos and produces the analytical value to the commanders and such, that isn't necessarily out of China. That's probably most out of the US or Australia or those two countries.
Yeah, I think the innovation is still in the U.S. The innovations that make this possible were mostly done in the U.S., even though they're now all manufactured outside the U.S. I think that's going to continue for the drone world as well. The new technology that allows the sensors to do new things, the software to process what the sensors do, the ability to turn the data into information. That work is still happening in the U.S. and still moving forward. I think Gretchen is right. And until the FAA has a reasonable system to enable legal operations, there's going to be this sort of holding down of progress in the U.S. And so that's why it's so critical to get those rules out there. The whole system that the FAA is using now to authorize folks, and they're releasing about 100 a week now, or 150 a week of these exemptions to the rules, is all because the regulatory structure just doesn't work for small unmanned aircraft at all. They need a new regulatory structure, which The proposal for that came out in February of 2014, and we're all anxiously awaiting that regulatory structure to become final and turn it around. But just as the FAA turned an exception process, and the exemption processes for exceptions typically did about 200 a year prior to this, the program that's running now, where they're doing about 100 and 150 a week. But the demand, there's over 11,000, 12,000 in the queue, or that have been filed. They're not all still in the queue, because obviously they've done probably around 4,500 by now. But that you can see this huge backlog, and that is a reflection of the need in the industry for a regulatory structure that can rapidly approve these operations.
Later that day, Ted had some of the members of the panel come downtown to appear on his Where the Road Leads talk show on ThinkTech.
The commercial potential for unmanned aircraft, especially small unmanned aircraft like this one, is truly enormous, because if you look at any function where currently people are put at risk to climb something, to go somewhere that's really not safe, this little guy can go safely and do the same thing and deliver a view of that object, be it a flare stack, a cell phone tower. 7 to 8 people a year on average die falling off of cell phone towers, and the most common thing they're doing is just going up there to inspect them to make sure everything's still working. So I think you're going to see that community is going to adopt these and adopt them in a big way. There's a little bit of holdback now because of the regulations aren't really done yet, but hopefully those enabling regulations will go in place later this spring, early next fall, but sometime as quickly as the FAA can do it. And that'll really open things up. There's also the video filming industry has already adopted these. They were the initial commercial adopters in the US, because the perspectives you can get with a high quality camera mounted on a small unmanned aircraft drone is just incredible. You can't get those shots any other way. So the internet is full of just incredibly spectacular shots made from drones that you probably could have gotten with a helicopter, but it would have been more expensive and more dangerous. And in some cases you couldn't, because they're low to the ground. The helicopter wind would have just completely obliterated the shots. So those two areas alone are going to drive the business. And then the scientific world is adopting them as well. And that's, you don't really think of that as commercial, but it's not a hobby or a toy either. So the potential is just enormous.
That's fantastic. What intrigues me is I came from the aerospace industry, as did you, and the concept of systems engineering to design these systems for safety. So we have triple redundancy or whatever it takes to make them so that they do the mission and keep doing the mission and keep doing the mission, fault accommodation par excellence, and just work on the mission rather than work on the parts is what I think is the interesting part, which then we'll get to the ARL aspect of that in a minute. But from your perspective, Gretchen, on the business development part, we have to think about liability protection, insurance. We have to think about a business that has sustainability and this sort of thing. So how do you see the business part of this thing going?
Well, the regulatory environment, it does allow for commercial operations today. It's just a little bit more restrictive, and yes, most companies need to get insurance as well, and the insurance companies are just kind of starting to get into the space and understand what the requirements are. But there are countless uses for drones commercially today, and I think that one of the biggest issues we're seeing is some of these commercial end users are not understanding the true value of the drone. So you have this equipment right here that can collect some interesting information, but there's a gap between how the information is collected and how it's actually used by the end user and how it's analyzed. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that businesses really need to start focusing on. It's the data, not necessarily the platform and the hardware anymore, but it's the data and how that's analyzed. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest opportunities to be successful in this industry.
So that sounds like that the value proposition will include the software that does the analysis and composition of pictures or whatever it might be downstream of the collection function. So in something like this where we have really almost a state change in the new technology, how do we get the user community to recognize that value and turn it into requirements that come back that the industry can go forth on?
Well, and that's one of the biggest challenges. And my firm is actually launching a nonprofit association called the Commercial Drone Alliance, where we're focusing on
Commercial Drone Alliance.
Yes,
Okay.
where we're going to be focusing on helping to prove that value. So we're going to be working with manufacturers, service providers, software providers, insurance investors, the whole kind of ecosystem that surround this community.
It's great to see the judiciary explore this technology and the issues relating to its development. It's great to see Ted Ralston do what he loves to do, talk and teach about drones. This was a useful connection and a good experience for everyone involved. We've had many talk shows on the subject of drones, and Ted and others are continuing the conversation. Drones are one of the most promising technologies of our time, and it's very important that we all educate ourselves about where they are going. If you want to expand your knowledge about drones, you can check out the shows Ted and other hosts have been doing about them. Take a look at thinktechhawaii.com or youtube.com/thinktechhawaii for these shows. We'll see you there. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward. ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons, and then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long. And some people listen to them all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any of our shows, they're all archived on demand on thinktechhawaii.com and YouTube. For our audio stream, go to thinktechhawaii.com/radio. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links. Or better yet, sign on to our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows. ThinkTech has a high-tech green screen video studio at Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to come down, see our studio, and join our live audience. Contact me, Jay, at thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement and raise your awareness on ThinkTech. Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet on ThinkTech.hi. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together. Join us and raise your awareness about the critical changes affecting and taking place in Hawaii. See what's going on, be a part of the conversation, and check it out at thinktechhawaii.com. Want to speak out about a community issue? ThinkTech invites you to come down to our studio and make a video at our Speaker's Corner. Contact me, Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. Want to join the conversation? Now you can call in and be included in our live shows. While you're watching any of our live shows, just call our hotline, 415-871-2474, and you can pose a question or make a comment. We look forward to getting your call. We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters. Okay, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Zuri Bender does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv. For lots more ThinkTech videos, and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a volunteer, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii. Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech family and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell. Aloha, everyone.